It was a strange little town. Once you turned 21, you would transform into some kind of animal. You didn't get to choose what you became. People kept their human minds, but no one could promise that their rationality wouldn't be worn away with time until one day they'd slip completely into being a beast. In the town now, only 4 girls still looked human. Other than them, there was just one old man, but his behavior had long since drifted beyond anything you'd call human. Every day he imitated a train, running back and forth along the country roads. 2 years ago, though, everything here had still been normal. Until that day, a girl was about to take the train home when fireworks suddenly burst in the sky. She'd been chosen, the lucky representative for the so-called 7G network activation project. She froze. Before she could even refuse, she was taken away by force. In no time, she was hauled up to the rooftop of a skyscraper. Countless eyes locked onto her from below, and she didn't know what to do. The host ignored her fear completely, barking at her to press the button again and again, louder every time. Under that crushing pressure, the girl finally hit the switch labeled miracle, and the world immediately went off the rails. Space began to warp. Buildings in the city twisted and rearranged as if someone had abstracted them and rebuilt them into something grotesque and unfamiliar. Even the crowd watching below couldn't escape being corrupted by the same force. The girl panicked. In the chaos, she pressed the button again. For a split second, everything seemed to freeze, then the collapse resumed. Realizing the button was doing something, she started pressing it over and over. The distortion finally stopped, but the world never went back to how it was. Her name was Yoka. Among the 4 girls, she had been the one who mattered most, their anchor. Ever since the accident 2 years ago, the other 3 had been searching for her. They combed every corner of the town and never found a single clue. Their only connection to the outside world came from an organization called the Black Panther Caravan. They delivered supplies to the town on a regular schedule, like the meat that Bear loved most. A girl asked Mr. Bear whether, compared to coarse grains, meat tasted better. The moment she said it, Mr. Bear blurted out how badly he wanted meat, so badly he felt like biting into it right now. The next second he lunged at the girl. She slapped him, and Mr. Bear looked utterly confused, as if he had no idea what had just happened. Just then, an armored truck rolled into town. Animals immediately crowded around it, because no one knew whether the next shipment would ever arrive. After the 7G incident, countless similar groups vanished one after another. Bears, pelicans, kangaroos, speedsters, dropping like flies. No one knew whether tomorrow or disaster would show up first. Now only the Black Panther Caravan remained, and that was exactly why they kept going. Hoshi picked up a sprig of myrtle. He couldn't explain why, he just felt an urge to take it. That was when Shizuru noticed a newspaper lying on the ground. She picked it up, and her eyes went wide. In this era, there was still a printed newspaper. The headline didn't matter. What shocked her was the photo. There, in the picture, was Yoka. The 4 of them could hardly believe what they were seeing, but the proof was right in front of them. Shizuru jumped up immediately and sprinted to Yoka's grandmother's house. No matter what, she had to tell her. They ran down lively country paths, across the river embankment that held so many childhood memories, and finally arrived. After the incident, Yoka's grandmother had become a guinea pig. The moment she saw her granddaughter in the photo, tears slid down her face. When the girls left, their emotions were tangled and hard to name. Hoshi didn't know what kind of tears those were. Raimi insisted they were tears of joy, because at least now they knew Yoka was alive. Akira, however, bluntly pointed out that guinea pigs only live 5 or 6 years. An argument broke out, but it also eased the heaviness in the air, just a little. Only Shizuru kept walking ahead, silent. The other 3 finally sensed something was off, but Shizuru seemed not to notice. She just kept going. Back home, Shizuru stared at a photo of the 5 of them together, lost in thought. Yoka was in Ikebukuro, far away. Shizuru had always assumed Yoka was somewhere near town, and that was why she'd searched for 2 years. Then she noticed Zenjiro in the distance. Worried he might be in danger, Shizuru went over. Even though she wasn't sure he could understand, she tried to persuade him to leave. For a moment, Zenjiro seemed to snap back to clarity. He kept repeating one word, hat. Shizuru understood. Just then, a small bag slipped out from his sleeve. Shizuru picked it up, still unsure what it meant. But the dog's nose gave them the answer. It sniffed once and bolted forward. Shizuru had no choice but to follow. They stopped beside a train car. The door handle wouldn't budge, so she went in through the side. Soon, the train was open. In the cab sat a hat. When Shizuru put the hat on Zenjiro's head, he instantly turned into a teenage boy. It turned out he had tried desperately to stop the development of 7G, but in the end he couldn't. Shizuru was stunned. Zenjiro also had ties to Ikebukuro. Not long after, Zenjiro reverted to a hunched old man again, his mind scattered. The next day, Shizuru told her mother the plan. Her mother didn't stop her, she supported her. She only gave one message: if you run into a Wolverine who always tries to act tough, tell him to stop being an idiot and come home. Before long, Shizuru finally cracked the hat's secret. With Zenjiro's help, she quickly learned how to operate the train. However, for reasons he couldn't explain, Zenjiro couldn't come with them. He wanted to say more, but everything happened too fast. When Shizuru's friends heard the plan, they rushed over to leave with her. Not long after, the group successfully drove the train out of town and stepped into the outside world. It was their first time leaving since the 7G incident. Unlike the others' temporary optimism, Akira didn't feel good about the trip at all. Because after the 7G incident, distance in the world had been stretched infinitely. A trip that used to take a little over an hour might now take a month, or even longer, to reach the same place. Then the next anomaly hit. The train car shook violently, and the speed spiked to something unnatural. Hoshi sensed something was wrong and urgently told Shizuru to slow down. Shizuru said she'd been braking the whole time, but no matter what she did, the speed wouldn't drop. The brakes were completely dead. Worse, a string of sharp curves appeared ahead out of nowhere. At that speed, every turn felt like dancing at the edge of a cliff. Shizuru couldn't afford a second of distraction. She gripped the controls so hard her hands went numb. After what felt like forever, she finally stabilized the train and got everyone out of danger. The others were still shaken. awaken, not fully back in their bodies yet. To take their minds off it, they decided to check their supplies. Everything had happened so suddenly that they'd followed Shizuru with almost no preparation. Akira dug out ingredients meant for pasta, which clearly wouldn't help much. Hoshi found a short-sleeve shirt. It wasn't practical either, but Akira and Raimi loved it. With Shizuru's permission, Akira and Raimi started arguing over who got to keep it. But once they finished counting, the situation looked grim. They barely had any food. Shizuru was confused. She could have sworn she'd packed plenty. As time passed, she realized an even more serious issue. They didn't have enough underwear. In the middle of their forced lightheartedness, the train rolled into a bank of thick fog. The air seemed to grow heavy instantly. Raimi kept asking when they'd arrive. The constant questions irritated Akira. After that, nobody spoke. The train kept moving forward. Then Deo, the yellow dog, seemed to sense something. He pressed himself to the window and growled low and non-stop. Shizuru stopped the train. Everyone looked outside, but the fog was so dense they couldn't make out anything ahead. Suddenly, a blurry shape approached. Akira immediately covered her ears and squeezed her eyes shut, insisting it might be a giraffe that had survived all the way from the Korea River. No one believed her, but as the silhouette came closer, they still couldn't help widening their eyes. When it finally reached them, they realized it was just a small boat shaped like a duck. A serious-looking adult man sat inside. Akira nervously hugged Raimi and declared he must be an emotionless assassin. In reality, the man had drifted here along the Korea River, recording and investigating everything as he went. He hadn't seen humans in a long time, and the sound of a train drew him in. When he heard their destination was Ikebukuro, he said he'd come from Ikebukuro himself. That instantly caught Shizuru's attention. She jumped down from the train to ask him more. After all, this was the first person they'd met who came from Ikebukuro, but the man claimed that everything beyond Cebu Ikebukuro had already disappeared. He admitted he hadn't seen it with his own eyes, it was his theory. He said mushrooms to the east were as big as people. Even farther east, humans lived alongside sheep, and their behavior was almost animal-like. The contradictions in his story quickly made the girls lose interest. Shizuru turned to head back to the train. Seeing that, the man hurried to stop her and gave them a solemn warning. Don't go to Ikebukuro. He believed something unimaginably terrible would happen ahead, but it was still just a guess. Shizuru didn't take it to heart. She only wanted to keep moving. The man rode after them and asked to trade items. He had organized his records into a map, and he believed it would be extremely valuable to them. Before they parted, he gave Shizuru a few more pieces of advice. After leaving him behind, the train finally emerged from the fog. The oppressive atmosphere lifted. Conversation and laughter returned. Because their ultimate goal was to find Yoka, Raimi even imagined that when they reached Ikebukuro, Yoka would be there, smiling and waving at them. At that moment, Hoshi walked up to Shizuru and said that if she left without saying anything, they would be heartbroken. Shizuru apologized. Raimi also suggested that they return to Nuya Town for now. Their supplies weren't nearly enough for a long journey. Instead of forcing it, they should prepare properly and then set out again. Meanwhile, back in town, Zenjiro put on the hat again, and each time he returned to normal, it still only lasted 5 short minutes. On the train, Shizuru finally stopped working the controls. She agreed with Raimi's judgment and decided to turn back. As the train started up again, the return trip began. But then Shizuru noticed a large amount of water pooled on the tracks. She slammed the brakes. Before anyone could react, the water level was rising fast, quietly, relentlessly. Shizuru suddenly remembered the map. She pulled it out, but the result was disappointing. The markings looked more like random scribbles, and the information was impossible to read. Then a sudden knocking sound drew their attention. Akira reacted first and recognized it as Morse code. Shizuru finally understood Zenjiro was trying to contact them. On the other side, Zenjiro was practically about to blow a fuse. They were supposed to sync information every day at 4 p.m., and he'd been pounding so hard he felt like his hammer was going to smoke, yet he got no response. He had no idea Morse code was far too complicated for Shizuru, let alone responding instantly. In the clutch, Akira snatched the hammer from Shizuru and rapped quickly against the rail, replying to Zenjiro. The message went through. Zenjiro got the response and learned the water was rising rapidly. He immediately sent back a warning. The motor was at risk of flooding, and they needed to head for higher ground now.